is about setting up a basic database, in this case a social network database, and take you through how to set up all the fields and use some validation as well. So you can see I've opened FileMaker, and what I'm going to do now is create a new database. Blank database, click on create and choose a name, which I'm going to choose there, and it's just going to save to my desktop. You should see it appear on the right hand side in a moment. As soon as you do that, it creates a table based on the name of the file, in this case SN, and creates 5 standard fields. First thing I'm going to do is just select all of those and delete all of those. So they're now gone. Now the table name, as I say, is called SN, which doesn't really help us very much. So I'm going to go here to where it says tables. I'm going to select that particular table, and I'm just going to change it to student. Now it's very important at this point you don't click create, but you click change. And now our table is called student, but of course our table has no fields and no records in it. So now I need to do that, and I can get there by clicking on that button, or I can get there by double clicking on there. And as you can see, the table that we're working with is student, and over here there are no fields. So we're going to add the fields, and it's very important when designing your database to stick to very common conventions for naming things. So I'm going to call this first field student underscore PK, and it's going to be a number, and then I'm going to create it. Now, because PK stands for primary key, and it means that every record, like each individual card in the file or each individual page, is very specific and has its own number, I'm going to go to options, and I'm going to choose under auto enter a serial number, which means that each time I create a new record or add a new page, if you like, of information, then it will add 1. So first record will be record 1, second one record 2, and so on. And just to make sure that the user can't accidentally change those numbers and cause confusion, if I choose prohibit modification of value during entry, that will stop anyone changing it. And click OK, and that is now done. Auto enter serial number, can't modify. So we'll now add in some other information, some other fields. I'm going to choose student first for first name and change that to text and create it. Student last for last name, I'm going to create that. Student year, and that's going to be a number, and I'm going to create that. Now with our number here for our student year, we want people to select a number which is valid in our database, and we do not want them to add in something which is a letter or a number which isn't actually within the database. Now we can set that up in a number of different ways, but the best way to do that is to set up in our validation. So go to options, validation, and here we've got a number of different things that we can choose from. It's going to be numeric, so we can say it must be a number, and we can choose a number of other options here. For example, we could choose in range, and we could say between 7 and 13, but of course that would allow the user to add in something like 7.5, so that won't really work. Since we know what the entries are going to be, 7 through to 13, we can actually make it a list that they select from. So we're going to say it must be a member of a value list. There is no list at the moment, so I'll create a value list, new, and I'll call it year, and I'll put in my custom values, which are going to be 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. That's done. Click on OK. So now when they select or put in a number, it must be either 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, or 13. Now there are some other options here. There's by calculation, which is a little bit more complicated. We don't need to worry about that. And also a maximum number of characters, which you might use if you were using, say, a registration number for a car and you knew that the maximum was going to be 6, so that they couldn't put accidentally 7 numbers in. Now the other thing to do is, if they do get it wrong, we want to give them a message that tells them what's gone wrong. So we click on display custom message, and we can write here, this must be a number. Click on OK. Now we're going to add a date of birth, DOB, student DOB, and that's going to be a date, and I'm going to click on create. And lastly, I'm going to have student interest 1, make that text, and create. Interest 2, create that. Interest 3, create that. Interest 4, create that. Interest 5, create that. Interest 6, create that. Now these are repeating fields which generally we wouldn't have in a database, but because we want to limit the number of interests that the student can choose, and we know that we're going to limit it to 6 and we won't need any more, we won't need to add 7, 8, 9 or 10, we can actually put those in at this point here, and we can control how many records or how many interests they actually have. If we wanted an unlimited number of interests, then we would need to set up a second table and join that table to this. It's not necessary at year 11 for us to do that. So as you can see, we've got an ID, a primary key, a first name, a last name, a year, which is a number, a date of birth, which is a date, and space for interests. So what we will do is we'll click on OK, and you will see that that's set up. Our first record has been added, and now we have space for all the other information. In the next video, I'll show you how to set up this layout so that it allows you to enter data and show you what happens with the validation when the user gets things wrong.